This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian and Mr. Boettcher for Breaking Down Security.
Hello, hello.
Hello, sir. How have you been?
Oh, just working.
Yeah.
Working.
Yeah, it's blustery here. I don't know if anybody can hear that in the background, but we've had 40, 50 mile an hour gusts today here in the Seattle area up here in the mountains. I lost the fence out of my house between my neighbors and myself today because of the wind. So, yeah.
You're a bad neighbor because good fences make good ones.
That is probably true.
You have a bad fence.
Well, it was actually worse in Austin. I actually did not know my neighbors, which was weird. I actually know neighbors on both sides. So I'm doing twice as good as what I was doing before. So, yeah, it was funny. We lived in Austin, and some guy comes up, and he's, sales guy, obviously. He's like, hey, I was just talking to Ben Johnson down the street. And I don't know. Ben Johnson doesn't live on our street, but just for instance, and he's like, yeah, you know Ben? I was like, no. He's like, but he's your next door neighbor. I was like, oh, that's his name. Okay, cool. I don't know what it was about Austin, but it's just the place I lived over there in Steiner Ranch was just not conducive to people getting out and meeting one another. I don't know. So yeah. So now we've got to replace a fence, and actually it's wintertime, so the windiness is just getting started. It's been quite horrendous down here. So you have had a very interesting day, sir. There was a tweet that you put out about some infected PDFs that occurred, or an infected doc that ended up doing some interesting stuff when you converted it to PDF.
Oh, yeah. So I was taking some older malware that I had collected over the last few months, and I was going to create some content that probably for user awareness training or whatever. Here's some examples, real-life malware of Word documents, and here's what they look like, and so on and so forth. And so I didn't want to open them, right, even though I could, because I knew these were, while they were still capable of infecting your system, you still had to click that macro button. But I didn't feel comfortable with it, so I was like, I could be a little safer. I could open this up, or I could create a PDF out of it, and then it would be benign, right? So I would right-click it, and I installed Foxit Reader, which doesn't run any scripting or whatever for PDFs. So it's a lot safer than the Adobe PDF Reader. And I right-clicked it and said, convert to PDF. And upon doing that, my software restriction policy went off. And I said, whoa, wait a minute here. That should not happen.
Okay, now wait. Now, what we talked about software restriction policy a couple of podcasts ago. Basically, it's an additional policy or additional controls in place that says, okay, applications can't run from a certain directory. They can't run from...
well, you set those, whatever you want. If you don't want anything to run on your desktop, then you can set a policy to restrict all executables from running on your desktop.
Okay.
Or you could whitelist, like, I want PuTTY to run from my desktop, but nothing else.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing.
Okay.
And you can customize it to however you want it, right? So yep. I have nothing that's in user space allowed to execute, except for GoToMeeting, which is atrocious for that, because they run everything out of user space.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and the executables change all the time. So, yeah, it's a pain in the butt for GoToMeeting, but other than that, I've got a couple of whitelisted executables, and that's it.
Okay.
So I whitelist everything that's run in user space. And when a piece of malware tries to execute from Windows Temp, which is the most common place, I'll get an alert, and it'll be set to not execute.
Okay.
What's interesting is you'll get a process execute in the log, but then 3 microseconds later, you'll get in the application you log, you'll get a software restriction policy rule. And so what happened was Foxit PDF reader opened up Word, and I guess to convert the doc to PDF, and Word just bypassed its own enable macro safety mechanism and just executed the VB script contained within the Word doc.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And luckily, I had set those policies in place. Otherwise, my computer would have been infected with a Trojan.
Yeah.
Which bypasses AV and all the other stuff. So, yeah, it would have been pretty nasty, but thankfully that didn't happen. And again, another use case for software restriction policies. Even us malware guys have the potential to get infected.
Yeah. So
for vectors that we didn't previously know about.
Yeah, but okay. So why would the PDF reader or the PDF printer or writer or converter in this case feel the need to run the macros? Is it a thing where the doc had some stuff inside of it that would only view properly if the macro was run? So like an S3 bucket or like a WordPress. You have to render the page or render the document before you can print it to PDF.
I think that's what it was thinking. I'm not sure that that's the case. I'm not an expert in macros for Word or Excel or anything, but I don't see why it would be needed. And in this case, it was converting it to PDF. I don't know how you can convert some sort of a macro type thing into PDF unless it was reading from a database on the fly and then populating the Word doc, whatever you see, with data and then convert it to PDF. That might be the thinking there. I'll have to run some further tests on what exactly is happening under the covers. I think it is executing Word in order to display and run the macros, and then Word doesn't have that safety mechanism in place. It seems like some sort of a backdoor or something to get into running these macros that I didn't previously know about.
Yeah.
And yeah, it might be a potential attack vector if we can figure out how, or hackers can figure out how this thing is run. Maybe they can bypass the safety mechanisms in Word by running it in a certain way. I don't know how you do that, by double clicking it and then bypassing the macros. I'm not sure, but apparently Foxit was able to run it. So who knows?
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
there's potential there at least.
Yeah, because sometimes when you open, say, a spreadsheet or something, it'll say, okay, to be able to view this properly, you have to enable macros. And that's how you normally infect somebody. So that would be my guess. There must have been some kind of, it automatically assumed that there was macros, so it's going to have to run them, assuming that, you want the page to look nice when you're converting it to PDF, so you're going to run any kind of code or any kind of stuff inside. So, yeah. So, you said something back there that kind of made me wonder. You said that it ran, but 3 milliseconds later, you got a log file entry that said the software restriction policy blocked it. Does that mean that the log entry was made when the event was blocked, or was there 3 milliseconds before it actually realized that there was something naughty going on and software restriction policy blocked it? Is there a 3 millisecond window there that they could have done something before software restriction policy blocked it?
I don't think that it actually ran. The log entry for the execution was, say, time X. And then the log entry for the block was X.003 seconds later.
Okay.
It wasn't milliseconds. It was like, nanoseconds.
Yeah.
3 nanoseconds later.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't really think the process ran. In fact, there was nothing that happened afterwards on that process.
Okay. Well,
right. So usually you say, okay, this particular process ran, and then it did some other stuff like ran PowerShell or injected code into Explorer or whatnot, or installed a service, that kind of thing. Yeah. But those things didn't happen, and it seemed like the blocking policy actually worked.
Yeah.
So blue teamers, go defend your user space by whitelisting it.
Yeah, I was wondering about some kind of race condition or something there. If somebody could do something in the time that, the software, the macro ran, and then like 3 milliseconds later, software restriction policy got it. If, there's a window there, however large or small, that something could be, done in the interim before that. I was just wondering if there was a race condition or something there. So
yeah, it was just a couple of clock ticks later, according to the timestamp.
Yeah.
So, it was just a couple of, what do you call it? Teraflops later.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Whatever the increment was, but it was very soon after. It surprised me. I thought the block would happen before the execution log would take place. I would have thought that the process execution log entry would have never happened, but it did.
Okay.
So that was interesting.
And all you did was say just block everything executing in Windows temp?
Yeah, you can do that. I have block everything in C users.
Okay.
C user star.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So that just means you have to put it somewhere else to execute it.
Yeah, or whitelist it.
Okay. All right.
The example would be, I want to run PuTTY from my desktop. So you put PuTTY and whitelist it as a rule.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's always better anyway, blacklisting everything and then allowing only certain things. So.
Oh, yeah. Whitelisting is better, but it's hard. So it's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Or a lot harder in some cases. So that's why people use certificates, and they say, well, if this thing is signed, then it should be okay, right?
Yeah.
So if it's something that's signed by Microsoft, then I trust it. If it's not signed by any of my trusted vendors, then I won't trust it. And that kind of leads us to what Flame did, right?
Yeah.
The Flame malware used a Microsoft cert, which they took. I guess they found a collision with MD5, and they were able to create a certificate and therefore bypass a lot of the controls that would have been in place to, if you're whitelisting certain certificates, this is how you can get by, right? And that's why we have to get our encryption right, and we have to be vigilant on what types of encryption and hashing we allow, and that's kind of why we're deprecating now SHA-1 certificates.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I saw that news article. They were talking about 35% of the most popular websites out there have not upgraded their web certs to SHA-2 yet, which is the new hotness. So and the whole thing comes from is that there's collision errors. So, it used to be MD5 was the only ones that did collisions, and then people found out that you can actually do collisions with SHA-1, and they're deprecating that, and there's actually, they say there's a deadline 1 January, or Google's going to be blocking any website that uses SHA-1 certificates. So if your website's using those, or your company's using those, you may want to check all your websites to make sure that you're using those, because even a self-signed SHA-1 cert is going to be blocked. So you have to regenerate your certs, regenerate your server certs, make sure that everything's using at least SHA-2, proper Diffie-Hellman handshakes, those kinds of things. I think Mozilla will probably follow suit once Google has done so, if they haven't mentioned it already.
Yeah, researchers found that it would take about $100,000 and some Amazon Cloud instances to come up with a SHA-1 collision theoretically.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why anyone with $100,000 could do that, and it may be that they could find something a lot more valuable than $100,000, right? If they have the right certificate.
Yeah. I gotta wonder. It's like you're gonna have to want to get a lot of money back for using $100,000. I mean, have to be like a government website or something. And the whole thing is it's just you're impersonating the website. So once you can get that collision, you can impersonate that website and make the website actually, make the browser actually believe that it is www.bobsjunkstore.com,
Yeah.
or something like that, where you log into Bob's Junk Store, you're going to buy or sell something, maybe you get somebody's password or something like that, the credit card information, that kind of thing.
Well, it could be, okay, well, you work for a company that's sort of got money, right? $100,000, that's no small change, but it's
That's
certainly
right.
affordable. What if your company wanted to take down some competition by creating a certificate and spoofing that site and kind of giving them a bad rep?
That is
That's possible.
That is very possible. Yeah. I mean, is that worth $100,000 worth of? I mean, yeah. I mean,
It could be.
if it turns somebody away from company X to your company, and that's a couple of $1,000,000, I guess you've made your money worth hand over fist there. So yeah. Or
Yeah.
if you could spend $100,000 and get a client by spoofing the person's website. I mean,
Yeah.
if you could get several $1,000,000 worth of profit and make $100,000, $100,000 doesn't seem so bad. So
Yeah. What scares me though is that SHA 256 is probably the next step up. I don't
it
know.
is
SHA 256.
bit. Yeah.
Well, all of the Bitcoin miners are using SHA 256. So that has had a lot of research into getting that as fast as possible.
Yep.
So the next step up, maybe it wouldn't be too long before that's deprecated as well. And of course, Moore's Law tells us that computing power is doubling every 18 months or 2 years or whatever. So if you take that into account, you definitely need to be prepared and keep up with these updates that need to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that was we were going to talk about that article a couple of weeks ago, but there was an article about how SHA 256 was considered, or SHA 3 hashes were being considered quantum safe. And sadly, I think the market droids got to the journalist who wrote that article, because they're not really quantum safe. But the problem is that all the little bits that the quantum computers crunch have to be fed through a traditional CPU. And right now, those traditional CPUs that filter out the noise and give you the bits back that are really important, that filter out all the noise, are not fast enough to keep up with the amount of data needed to push through the quantum computer to get your hash values and stuff. So right now they're considered quantum safe only because the technology on the back end that is actually making sense of the quantum data is not fast enough to keep up.
Yeah. Once they bridge that gap, though, I'm sure that 256 will go the way of the dinosaur or the way of MD5, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, they have to have electronic computers or bit computers, as you might say, to get rid of all the errors that may occur with quantum computers.
Yep.
So, yeah, quantum computers are coming around. I know IBM has made some investments in quantum computing. They actually have two different, if I remember correctly, two different projects with two different partners going on. I don't know. Maybe it's just to make the mainframe relevant again or something. I don't know, but it's definitely something that we need to keep an eye on, because it's a game changer, and it's what's going to keep Moore's Law relevant, right?
True. That's very true.
Because there is a theoretical limit to Moore's Law in that you can't get the transistors smaller than a few atoms, right? It's not possible. There is no way you can stop electric current by just having an atom-sized transistor. It's just not big enough.
That we know of yet. Current technology doesn't allow for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the theoretical limit is an atom,
That is
right?
true.
And I think we've got transistors. We create more transistors every year than we produce grains of rice. That's how small they are. You can fit like 520 of them inside a red blood cell.
Yep.
So they're getting smaller and smaller, but there will be a limit, and quantum computing, I think, will take that gap and even accelerate it.
Yep.
So it's coming.
Hey, did you hear about BlackNurse? The vulnerability. Please do not make the mistake of, Googling BlackNurse with words. Apparently, I've been told, I did not look it up myself, but apparently that will cause you it might cause you some issues on Google image search.
Yeah, the employee analytic program that your security team is running might throw some red flags.
Dude, that's why I always, I have two separate boxes. I have a work box and I have my personal box. I do everything on my personal box because one, whatever we're doing over here for work, it scares me. And, if I infect myself, that's fine. But if I infect myself at work, it's completely different. But
yeah. So I did hear about BlackNurse.
Yeah.
And it's a way of denial of service.
I like it. Okay. Wait. I don't like it in the traditional sense of liking something. I just think it's interesting how, we hear about all these botnets like Mirai and all those that are taking hundreds of terabytes to knock a website or something off the net. And apparently BlackNurse is down to the point where a single laptop with 40 megabits of data can knock a firewall offline. And
I read 15 megabits.
Well, is that the network speed or the amount of data? Because I read that one person with one laptop could do it, and it was like 300 packets a second is enough to knock something offline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it all comes down to a specific ICMP ping type.
The type 3, code 3.
Yep.
Which is destination and port unreachable.
That is right.
Right. So I think the idea behind it is when a firewall receives this sort of a BlackNurse attack, that's an ICMP packet with type 3 code 3, and it sort of has to do some back end interpretation.
Yep.
Right, which causes the CPU to, it doesn't cause the CPU to spin it out of control, but it causes some CPU cycles.
That's right.
And you flood the firewall with enough of these, and the CPU goes crazy. So it's not a direct attack on the network; it's attack on the firewall itself.
Yeah, and it's different than using. It's different than the other ICMP attacks, like the Smurf attack, where, or what was the other one? It was called Fraggle. Fraggle. That's right. Where you're sending a large amount of UDP packets or to the broadcast
taking me back
address.
to the 80s, man.
I know, these are old school, man. But, ICMP has always been good for, just making things happen. So, there was there's a website, NetResSec, that I was doing some research on, and, it affects Cisco and Palo Alto boxes, and they didn't have any. So I think some of these are older, like the old 5500 series Cisco ASAs. So 5550s and the 5515s. It actually affects the latest generations too. So there's Sonic Wall, Fortinet, FortiGate. They have a bunch of stuff that's vulnerable to those, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I think it's just an example of, this is a loner type attack. I mean, you're not going to get a shell or anything on it, but I mean, if you just want to take somebody offline, and most organizations do a layered approach, but even their DMZ runs through their Cisco firewall. And if you can knock the Cisco firewall offline, you're going to knock everything they do offline. VPN, web services, file services, anything. You're going to knock them offline for an undetermined amount of time. And even if they do come back up, if they haven't done anything to fix the ICMP issue, you can just knock them off again.
And it has to do with them enabling ICMP, right? Or them accepting ICMP traffic.
That's right.
I love this default recommendation from Cisco is we recommend that you grant permission for the ICMP unreachable message type 3. Yes. Denying ICMP unreachable message disables ICMP path MTU discovery, which can halt IPsec and PPTP traffic. Wow. See these RFCs for details about path MTU discovery. So Cisco recommends turning ICMP type 3 on, but yet all you need is 15 megabits or something to take down the entire firewall.
Yeah, and it sounds like if you don't have those, did you just say it affects IPsec traffic if you don't have that on?
It says Denying ICMP unreachable messages disables ICMP path MTU discovery.
Okay. All right.
So, right, the path discovery mechanism in the firewall, which can halt IPsec and PPTP traffic.
Yeah. Yeah, Palo Alto recommends enabling flood protection, ICMP floods, and ICMP v6 flood protections, configuring a denial of service protection policy that specifies criteria for that. So I would assume you have to set up some kind of, well, if I get so many, type 3 code 3s in such amount of time, go ahead and, deny that IP address from connecting. So
That's way too advanced.
yeah, well, I mean, or allowing ping at all to your firewall. I don't think you should allow ping on your firewall at all. If you're using your firewall for your VPN concentrator, maybe you should be, separating, the roles of your VPN. I have seen organizations that use their firewall for everything, including DHCP, which is it's a recipe for disaster. So. Yeah, so I mean, I think at some point, I think we probably need to go into more detail about ICMP because it's one of the oldest still used protocols out there. I mean, everybody uses ping, everybody is supposed to block ping, but apparently, people still use it for something. So, yeah. So okay. Now I'm going to shift gears here for a second because you and me kind of got into it about the benevolent malware. So I was reading this article about quote unquote benevolent malware. It's on SANS website. They said that, and actually it was Rick, I'm going to ruin his name, Wahner, Wanner. Anyway, he posted this on the 11th. He was talking about this Reincarna, which is a quote-unquote benevolent malware. And
which is an oxymoron, by the way.
Okay, well, what do you want to call it then? Goodware? No. What's the opposite of mal in Spanish? What is that? Buenoware? Buenoware? Buenoware. Oh, God.
Okay.
Edgar's going to kill me. I know he will. Edgar's going to kill me. So this non-mal malware... what it does is, so, with the Mirai botnet and everything and all these devices out there that are being infected, which I just saw that post from Rob Graham about that camera he bought, 90 seconds to infection with Mirai, which we'll talk about after if we've got time. But what this benevolent malware does is it basically infects your endpoint device, your Linksys router or what have you.
Using the Mirai source code, right?
Does it?
It would have to be infecting these devices.
Well, it uses a backdoor. All I saw from the blog post was that it does use a backdoor, and then infects your box. And what you do is it shuts off Telnet, it shuts off, it disables, Telnet, it changes your root admin passwords, and will possibly update the firmware on your box, which I thought was pretty cool. It will actually patch your devices. I hope patches with the actual software, because that would be awful if it was putting its own custom version. But so if you try to Telnet into the box, for whatever reason, it tells you you've been infected by your Buenoware, in this case. That's patent pending, by the way. I'm going to take that. I'm going to own that. Buenoware. It tells you you've been infected by this malware, so it's up front. It says, we don't have any intentions of damaging your device. This is what they did to, help protect you. And it's, like most botnets, like Mirai and those, it's only available in memory. So once you reboot your device, you're uninfected again. But if you don't take steps, this is like the stick, we've solved your problem, but if you reboot your box and don't do anything about it, we're going to reinfect you again. Bang, bang, bang. So they tell you you're going to get infected again. They even share the source, which is kind of cool. But they call themselves Team White. I tried to find information about who Team White were. They're actually quite, cagey. They're not out there. And plus, it's generic enough. Team White just kind of comes up as some things like BlackNurse that you don't want to be searching for necessarily on the at work.
I can see that.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? Do you not like the idea of Buenoware or non-mal malware helping people who normally would not know they've been infected and are serving up DDoS?
I don't, and there are a few reasons for that. Number one, they don't have permission, right? They're infecting those boxes without permission, or those
Yes.
cameras or DVRs or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So we all know that you got to have permission before you do this stuff. Second, don't they create more traffic trying to search for others to infect with Buenoware? Right?
That is true.
So they're actually creating more traffic. Well, let's say I have a limit on my bandwidth. You're infecting my thing with your software and then using my traffic, which I have to pay for, right? Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's on a cell phone that I'm paying data limits. And I've heard that some people in other cities have limits on their cable lines and DSL and stuff like that. So, or maybe they have satellite internet and they're Skyping away at work trying to close the $1 million deal, and all of a sudden their ISP says, yeah, you use too much data.
Yeah.
And it's because of this, right? And then also, what if there's a bug in their code or something and they start, I don't know, creating DDoS, or they cause the Samsung battery inside the DVR to explode and cause a house fire or whatever, things like that could happen.
Yeah.
And so you're walking on waters that you probably shouldn't, because there might be sharks.
Yep. Okay. So while you were talking, and I was fully listening to that, by the way, I did try to find out if there was other information about this, and I come up on something. Apparently, Buenoware is not. It's no bueno. They actually called it prosumware, which is derived from Latin word prosum, meaning to be useful, to do good, or benefit. And this is not the first time these kinds of malware infections, prosumware infections, have come out. There was actually one in 2012 called Karna, which was used for research purposes. Both of them, Reincarna and this one also, Karna, actually it's called Karna, so this was like Reincarna, use a command and control server to do whatever it is they need to do. So in many ways it is a botnet, but it's a beneficial botnet for some reason. So they infected several 100 million devices back in 2012. So I can only imagine how many they were able to infect now. So they were trying to do it as part of an internet census, though. So
all a hacker would have to do, instead of infecting 100,000 different endpoints, they would just have to hack into the CNC, and then boom.
That is true. That would be a single point of failure in this case. So instead of putting out something that would be good, the box would either patch you with some firmware that was bad, or put up a new box, or start a piece of malware with a DGA in it, and get your root that way. So yeah, I guess I see your point that you shouldn't allow, or should not be considering yourselves to be white knights by infecting boxes, but I mean, you're
trying to help, but
yeah,
it may not be the right way to help.
I mean, obviously there may be too many devices out there to fix, A lot of these, there's so many webcams out there now. There's so many, Nest devices. There's so many, home devices out there where you might actually do more harm than good. You might actually brick your refrigerator or make it do something that you're not wanting it to do. You may turn on Sabbath mode or something on your refrigerator, by downloading a benevolent piece of malware. Yeah, you may damage people's devices. So, that is a fair point. So
it's cool to do. I think it's a nice project. I think ultimately, though, it's sort of sticking your finger in the dam. The dam's ultimately going to break.
Yeah. Eventually.
You're just delaying it ever so slightly.
Yeah.
It's best to let this Mirai thing run its course. Something's going to happen, because, like you said, 98 seconds to infection, something's going to go down. and soon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't know what exactly is in store, but something's going to go down, and it's going to take a lot of work to get things on the right track again. Yeah, the dam's going to bust. Everybody's going to clean up and recover from that, and hopefully we'll be better for it, but we'll see.
Yeah. We're recording on the 18th, and about 2 in the morning on the 18th of November, my time, Pacific time, Rob Graham, at Errata Bob, ERRATA Rob, he posted he bought a surveillance camera. He set up a Raspberry Pi as a router, firewall, NAT to isolate it from his home network. He said within 5 minutes he was compromised by the Mirai botnet. Apparently he didn't. I would imagine he didn't. He just set it up like a normal user would have. No password, telnet open. He just plugged it in and turned it on. Connected to the network, done. So he said once he was compromised, it grabbed the processor info. It started looking for wget or TFTP to download the binaries. And he said that didn't work, so it had to do it the hard way. And it looks like it ran echo-ne and then ran some shellcode to the UPnP service, which UPnP queries your firewall and asks it to open ports for your device outbound, which is you should be turning UPnP off on your firewall if you've got that enabled, because that's not good. Then it goes the old school method and downloads the binary and installs it, and then you're infected. He said it took him 98 seconds to be infected by Mirai. And then he said something piggybacked on the back of it, and he actually had multiple shells running from 2 different botnets. So he had 2 active infections. So it was interesting that it only took 98 seconds. It harkens back to what was that, Windows 2000 or something, where it was like there were so many vulnerabilities on the stock version of Windows 2000 that within 10 minutes you could be infected by, from something off the internet while you were downloading the updates to fix your box. So yeah, it was like you could get infected faster than the downloads from Windows Update could happen. So yeah, I found this interesting. I kind of laughed along with it. We'll have a link in the show notes to the Amazon camera that you should know not to buy. From what I understand from our Slack channel, which I'll talk about later, somebody said they actually had one of those in their office looking at like a CNC box or CNC machine that they had. And he said the image quality is great. It's just the quality of the security is crap. So, people who are buying these things, they don't think about the security when they're setting it up. They just plug it in and go. So, and then... Yeah,
they're assuming the best.
Yeah.
They're assuming that these kind of things have been thought through by people who know better.
Yep. Well, Mr. Boettcher, I think we're going to cut this a little short this week. I'm actually traveling this weekend. I don't know if we're going to take the week off of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is Thursday for you non-USians here. It's the 4th Thursday of every month, of course. So if you wonder why you're sending emails to an American company or your American counterparts and nobody's answering, that's why. We're all probably comatose from Turkey and watching American football and what have you. So, Mr. Boettcher, if people wanted to get a hold of you, how would they go about doing so?
The best place will be on Twitter. My handle is @BoettcherPwned. Is it called a handle or a
handle
thing?
works.
Yeah, okay.
Handle
so
works.
@BoettcherPwned.
Yeah.
My last name BoettcherPwned.
Yep. And you were telling me last week that LogMD is 1.0 now. You can download version 1.0 on your website.
Yeah, download the free version, try it out. If you like it, there's some extra features in Pro, and you can find out all that information, logmd.com, log-md.com.
Cool.
Yep. And it's going good. Adding some new features almost figuratively as we speak.
You're not coding while you're doing the podcast, right?
No, I said figuratively, not literally.
All right. So your marketing weasel / head sales guy, Michael Goff, he's going to be doing some teaching on that in the near future, right?
Oh yeah, he's going to be teaching. I think it's December 12th through 14th, but don't quote me on that. You can go to the Austin ISSA website to find out, or malwarearchaeology.com or log-md.com and find out when he's teaching. He's got a Windows logging course one day, and then 2 days for malware discovery. So learn how to discover malware on your system, what different things you need to set to be able to catch the foo, right?
Yeah.
That would infect your system, and things that post exploits that hackers use. PowerShell's all the rage. So how do you detect PowerShell from running, things like that? Very valuable stuff for anyone in IR or forensics or even compliance.
Cool. All right. All right. So if you want to follow me or the official podcast, you can follow Breaksec. That's the official podcast Twitter, BRAKESEC. You can also follow me at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. Slack channel. I always feel like I'm not the lead dog anymore because defensive security beat us to the Slack channel. So it feels like I'm not the lead dog. So I'm watching the lead dog's butt as we're in the sled dog race, unfortunately. Yeah. But we do have a Slack channel. We've got a lot of people on there. We have about 70 people right now. We talk about all kinds of stuff. Oh, our book club is literally in about an hour. We're doing a book club. We picked a book called Building Software Security, Building Security In with Gary McGraw. He wrote it. We're going to hopefully have him on in a future podcast at some point to talk about the book and some of the other things that have been going on with him and his company.
You just jinxed it.
No. Shh.
You jinxed it.
No. This is a thing. It will happen. I can almost guarantee it. I almost whiffed on the book thing. The book thing starts in about 45 minutes with us. We got about 10 people, so you've missed this one because 10 people in a hangout is going to be kind of a pain in the butt. So we're going to pick another book in a couple of weeks once we finish through this book, and hopefully it'll go great. But if you want to get involved with that or any of the conversations online there, you can sign up at https breaksec.signup.team, and then I'll add you to the group and you can start talking. So you can hit us up on there. We're also on Facebook. We're on we're on the Twitter. We're on LinkedIn group, which we don't use a lot, to be frank. And if you are available, hello my wife. Oh, that's lovely. She made me dinner. Thank you, dear. Wow. Okay, that's not going in the blooper reel, is it? What happens is if she doesn't give me food, she waits until I'm done, which kind of sucks. And then it's I told her to eat without me, but anyway. So yeah, we're all over the place. We're on TuneIn Radio app. We are on the Google Play Store. We're on iTunes. If you are leaving feedback on iTunes, or if you download it and use it on iTunes, please leave us some feedback. We'd appreciate that. We have a Patreon. Many thanks to the people who support us on Patreon. All that money goes to upkeep. We have over $600, which we'll probably just end up donating to charity because, we don't take the money necessarily for upkeep. So it's just there for funds. So we'll probably donate something like Hackers Charity or a local security company or group or something here, charity, nonprofit. But thank you for donating anyway. So that's great. So, Mr. Boettcher, if I don't see you before Thanksgiving, have a happy Thanksgiving. Have a happy Thanksgiving to all our U.S.-based fans. And late happy Thanksgiving to all the Canadians who had it last month. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, sir.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Well, this has been it for Breaking Down Security this week. You have a great week and great holiday, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.